So there's a, if correct signs are divided, there are basic three, aren't there? Correct effect signs, correct nature signs, and correct non-observation signs. So out of those three, we're on the second. Yeah, so we're just got to work ourselves back into all this terminology and way of thinking. A bit tricky, but I think very rewarding. So sure Tom Carper would be pleased to see we're studying signs and reasonings. So secondly, with respect to correct nature signs, there are two definitions and divisions. So I'm on page 18, right? Page 18, mid page 18. So the two for correct nature signs is definitions and divisions as usual. So that which is the three nature modes is the definition of correct sign. That doesn't give you much help. Don't know whenever you would use that correct sign, three nature modes, because it tells you so little. You might use it just as a sort of shorthand thing in debate, but can't really make much of it. But yes, there's got to be a difference. What is the defining characteristics of a nature sign that makes it different from a effect sign, correct effect sign, and a correct non-observation sign? But it doesn't really come out in the word nature, the correct nature signs. But there's a hint there. There's a hint there. Nature. Something has to be the same nature, or be of the nature of. Be what nature? So is the more long-winded definition when it's applied to a base any help then? So if applied to a base, if it is held as the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of sound as impermanent by the sign product, it is necessarily the same essence as product, and it is the three modes in the proof of sound as impermanent by the sign product. Yeah, so it's got to be the three modes. But how do you know it is the three modes? Yeah, so the sort of special point about the nature sign should be contained, therefore, in the first part of the definition. If it is held as the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of sound as impermanent by the sign product, it is necessarily the same essence as product. Okay, then. It follows it is not, because you cannot posit the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of sound as impermanent by the sign product. Marco, can you posit the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of sound as impermanent by the sign product?
In the proof of sound as impermanent by the sign product?
Yes. What is the explicit predicate of the probandum? Can you posit it?
Sound is impermanent?
I would say sound as impermanent is the probandum. That's the thing you're trying to prove. That which is you're trying to prove. You're trying to prove the sound is impermanent. The predicate of the probandum.
The predicate.
It's part of the probandum. Pardon?
The predicate of the probandum.
Yeah. Sound is impermanent, I would say, is the probandum. That which you're trying to prove, yeah. But the predicate is something more particular than that.
It's impermanent.
Yeah, I would say impermanent is the predicate of the probandum, the explicit predicate of the probandum. Yeah, so you've got the subject or the basis of debate, probably some other names for it too. That's sound. And you've got product being the sign, the reason, that which proves. So the predicate of the probandum is the middle bit, yeah. So the predicate is that which you're trying to prove of the subject. Graham is going to town, Losell is going to town, Losell is the subject, and then going to town is going to town, all that is the predicate. That's what you're trying to prove. Well, that's what you were talking about. That's the quality of the subject. So that's the predicate, the thing that applies to the subject, the thing that you want to know about the subject, the thing that you're informing somebody about the subject. Yeah. So then it's got this word explicit predicate of the probandum. So that implies that there would be something that's the implicit predicate of the probandum. If it's necessary to say explicit, is that trying to exclude the implicit? So there is also an implicit predicate of the probandum that's being specifically excluded by having the word explicit in the definition. So can you suggest anything that would be the predicate of the probandum in the proof of sound as impermanent by the sign product, but not the explicit predicate of the probandum?
Still me?
Can you suggest anything?
Still in sound as impermanent, right?
Same sign, yeah. Sound is impermanent by the sign product. So impermanent is the explicit predicate. So it implies that there's an implicit.
Sound is not permanent?
Sound is not permanent. What do you think about that, Jakob? You think not permanent? Not permanent could be the predicate of the probandum in that proof, but not the explicit predicate of the probandum.
No, because that is the predicate of the negandum, I think. Not the. No, it's not
permanent. It said not permanent.
Yeah.
Would it be something like
negand? Permanent might be the negand predicate of the negand. Go on.
Yeah, I'm mistaken.
Would it be something like momentary, maybe, or
well,
the definition?
Who said momentary?
Oh, me, Jan.
Oh, Jan, you turned up, have you? Welcome.
Hi.
Jan, oh, there you are. Next to Maria. Yeah, okay. Momentary, do you think momentary could be implicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of that?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm guessing if it's not permanent, that would seem to be right.
Well, momentary, I would say, is not the explicit predicate of the probandum.
Yeah.
It says you can realize momentary without realizing impermanent. You know, like you could have a sign like sound is impermanent because it's momentary. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sound is impermanent because it's momentary. So that's considered a correct sign. It's a correct sign if you're only proving the definiendum. You already know the meaning of impermanent. So it's not like you're really learning the meaning of impermanent, because you realize sort of the meaning of impermanent as a sign. But you're just learning the name, how to connect the. So when it can be impermanent because it's momentary, you can realize momentary without realizing the predicate of the probandum of that sign. Because that's how it has to be. Yeah? You have to be able to realize the property of the subject without realizing the probandum. Yeah. In the correct sign, you have to be able to realize that sign's true of the subject without realizing the probandum. So you can do that with momentary. You can realize sound is momentary without realizing it's impermanent. Yeah. I mean, in ordinary terms, that's just like, say the Sanskrit word for pot is gata, yeah? So you could realize round-based, flat-bellied over the water, the full kind of clear, direct vallecanizer of it and everything. But you don't know it's called gata in Sanskrit, yeah? But somebody comes along and explains to you in our language, that's, this round-bellied, flat-bellied over the water is a gata, yeah? So it's like you're learning to apply the name to the object. So momentary is not the predicate of the probandum in that sign, because you can realize momentary without realizing impermanent. It's not the predicate of the probandum. So it's not the implicit or the explicit predicate of the probandum now. But when we come on to other ways of dividing correct signs, it will come up. This is the first way of dividing correct signs, you see, effect, nature, non-observation. But there are other ways of dividing correct signs. So the question I'm talking about does come up a bit later. So that was impermanent. So that was momentary. So I wouldn't say that's possible as a probandum in this sign. Did you say something else, Jakob?
No, not yet, but I can say opposite of not impermanent, that is the implicit predicate of the probandum.
Yeah, that's another one. That's a bit tricky, but
Mm.
I've always wondered why they keep putting that one in. But they do seem to say that opposite of not being permanent. If you realize something is or not opposite of not being impermanent, sorry. If you realize something is impermanent, you realize sort of automatically that it's opposite of not being impermanent. Double negative, not impermanent. That doesn't seem so, you know, kind of obvious to me. But it does seem that that could be the implicit predicate of the probandum, the way these people are working. But my more preferred one, and I'm not saying right, but I haven't had time to look at all these things up so clearly. I would say like not permanent. Not permanent. Yeah, I would say if you realize something's impermanent, you automatically realize it's not permanent. If you realize it's momentary, or you realize it's definitely not static, then it's not a kind of a Komolov phenomenon non-momentary. So if you realize it's permanent, it's a phenomenon non-momentary. But if you realize it is momentary, you know, it is impermanent, then automatically you realize it's not permanent then. So that's what it thinks it means by the implicit predicate of the probandum. Something you would realize at the time you realize something's impermanent. Whatever else you might realize about that phenomena, kind of, you know, along with that, such as it's you know, because it's in the impermanent class, it can't be in the permanent class. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a reason for putting it explicit in there, and I think that might be it. Because the explicit predicate of the probandum here is a positive phenomena. But if you said not permanent, then you are kind of, you know, dealing with a negative phenomena, not permanent, which may be unwanted, you know. Why is that unwanted? Well, you tell me. Okay, so so we're dealing with what is the explicit predicate for the probandum here. So that's impermanent then. And it is necessarily the same essence as product. So that's that seems to be like the kind of, you know, the key thing here. We're not talking about effect and cause, like when we talked about smoke and fire. Smoke's a sign of fire, not because it's the same essence as fire, but because it's, you know, effective fire. And if it's the effective fire, it's necessarily not the same essence as fire, right? Effect and cause are never the same essence. They you know, the effect, that cause and its effect. Okay. Fire and smoke, they're not the same essence. They're related, you know, but they're not the same essence. Subsequently related or something, you know, the relation that in effect has to its cause. But here we've got a different type of, you know, connection going on. So they're kind of putting forward this idea of essence. Essence is the same as nature, really, isn't it? Essence and nature, kind of just about the same thing, really. So now it's saying that which is the explicit predicate of the probandum, so that's impermanent then, will be the same essence as product. So is permanent the same essence as product? Sorry, is impermanent. Is impermanent the same essence as product then? What do you think, Paul?
Except.
So the subject impermanent is the same essence as product.
Accept.
And product, is it the same essence as impermanent?
Accept.
So the two product and impermanent are the same essence.
Accept.
So if you have two things like A and B that are the same nature or same essence, is A necessarily the same essence as B and B necessarily the same essence as A?
I accept.
Do you?
Mm.
So the subject, the two pot and functioning thing,
Mm-hmm.
follows they are the same essence.
Accept.
So it follows the pot is the same essence as the functioning thing.
Accept.
So it follows the functioning thing is the same essence as pot.
Accept.
Do you?
I accept that. But I didn't accept that they're related to the same essence.
I'm talking about the same essence.
Just same essence, I accept.
So functioning is the same essence as pot.
Accept.
So functioning thing is able to water
Why?
because it's the same essence as pot.
No pervasion.
There is a pervasion because if it's the same nature as pot, same essence as pot, it's necessarily the same essence as pot. Sorry, if it's the same essence as pot, it's necessarily the same nature as pot.
Still no pervasion.
So functioning is the same nature as pot.
Accept.
So functioning has the nature of being a pot.
Why?
Because it's the same nature as pot.
There's no pervasion.
So the subject functioning, it doesn't have the nature of being a pot, but it is the same nature as pot.
Accept.
So the subject functioning is the same nature as pot because?
Because functioning thing and pot are same substance.
Okay, they are the same substance, they are the same nature, but is functioning thing the same substance as pot?
I accept.
Functioning, it follows, is not the same substance as pot because there are lots of functioning which are not pots and don't hold water.
No pervasion.
So functioning thing is the same substance as pot because?
Because there's not a location that exists where pot exists and functioning thing does not exist.
Where did you get that one from? Okay, well, yes, what you're saying is quite correct as far as I can see. So I'm not succeeding in casting any doubt in your mind. So that's all right. But is this definition satisfactory then? Because if you said something like, so the subject sound is impermanent because it's an object of knowledge, right? The subject sound, it follows it is impermanent because it's an object of knowledge. So it follows that if impermanent is the explicit predicate of the probandum there, then impermanent is the same essence as object of knowledge.
Accept.
Yeah. So then that should be a correct sign then, correct nature sign. Because you've got the explicit predicate of the probandum being the same nature as the sign, and that's all you need.
Pervasion.
Okay, so you've got two things like impermanence as the explicit predicate of the probandum. You've got object of knowledge as a sign, and they're both the same nature. But that's not enough to make it a correct nature sign then. Just if there's the property of the subject is established, yeah, that sound is an object of knowledge, no problem there. There's the property of the subject, right? And then you've got a case where the explicit predicate of the probandum and the sign are the same nature. but that's not enough to make it a correct sign.
So
So what's wrong then? Sound is impermanent because it's an object of knowledge. The sign and the predicate have got to be the same nature if it's a nature sign. That seems to be what he's saying. It's got to be the same essence. But that's not enough on its own. So what else has got to be there?
it has to be the three modes.
Yeah. So what's the essential thing that it would be the three modes? It has to be in the similar class, not absent from the dissimilar class. There's got to be, this correct second party who sees that without realizing, the probandum. But that's true of any sign. So what's the speciality of the nature sign? Yes, it's not in the dissimilar class. Yes, the sign is in the is wholly in the is only in the dissimilar class. Is only in the similar class, and it's only non-existent in the dissimilar class. But where's the the connection that necessitates that because it is that sign, it has to be that predicate. If you just say, oh, they've just as long as it's the same nature, then but that's not enough. It's not. There's no guarantee that it's a correct sign just because of the there's the same nature relation, the same nature thing going on between the predicate and the sign. So a little bit more required. Okay, so that's one question. What exactly is the connection in between the sign and the predicate in this type of correct nature sign? So in the correct effect sign, we can say, sort of simply like, well, the sign is going to be the effect of the predicate, just as for example, smoke is the effect of fire. So then you've got some dependable criteria. So if that effect is existing, then the cause has to exist. But just because two things are the same nature, it doesn't necessarily mean that because one exists, the other has to exist. Like pot and function thing are the same nature, but just because function thing exists, it doesn't mean that pot has to exist. So just if the two are the same nature, or the predicate's the same nature as a sign, it doesn't mean because the sign's there, the effect, the predicate has to be there. Impermanent is the same nature as object of knowledge, or what another example? Yeah, arisen from effort. This maybe we've had that one enough. Arisen from effort. Effort is a predicate, and impermanent is a sign. They're both the same nature. Arisen from effort and permanent are the same nature. But just because impermanent's there doesn't mean arisen from effort has to be there on that object. Yeah, or a simpler thing. The color of the rose, it's red because it's a color. Because red and color are the same nature. But just by the sign being the same nature as the predicate, or the predicate being the same nature as the sign, doesn't mean that sign is that sign is like obliging that predicate to be there. Just because its color is there doesn't mean it has to be red. So just them two being the same nature isn't quite the whole story, is it? See what I mean? Yeah, so that's one thing to think about. What else is needed? And then if you said if somebody puts forward the sign, the subject pot, it follows it is not permanent because it is a product. Would you accept that as a correct nature sign, Jason? Pyro Talks.
Can you repeat that, please?
Advertising is Pyro Talks, you see.
What, sorry?
You've got your Pyro Talks sign up. It sounds like it looks like you're advertising your Pyro Talks business.
Take every opportunity.
Yeah. Yes. Good. Why not? Yeah. Are we a Pyro Talk then?
No.
No.
Could be if we talk about fundraising.
Well, it's got to be about charity work, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the subject sound, it follows it is not permanent because it's a product. Is that follows that's the correct nature sign?
Accept.
What do you say, Hanale? The subject sound, it is not permanent because it's a product. Is that a correct nature sign?
Accept.
Oh, you do you? Thought you were one of my best students. Thomas, the subject sound, it follows it is not permanent because it's a product. Correct nature sign?
Oh, wait. Just remembered something.
We're late now.
Why?
Thomas. The subject sound, it follows it is not permanent because it's a product. In that proof, sound, it follows it is not a correct nature sign.
Accept.
The subject sound is not a correct nature sign in the proof of sound being impermanent by the sign product because
Not permanent and product and not same nature.
so the subject not product, so not permanent and product
No.
are not the same nature. Yeah.
Yeah, accept.
So the different nature.
Accept.
Paul's looking horrified, by the way.
I know, I can tell. They've gone wrong completely.
Well, any product is going to have the nature of not being permanent, isn't it?
Accept.
So it's like a 3-point relationship, isn't it? If it's a product, it's necessarily not permanent.
Accept.
But if it's not permanent, it's not necessarily a product. For instance, rabbit horn, yeah, okay.
Accept.
But if one is totally contained within the other, then they're going to be the same nature, aren't they? It's like
Exactly.
functioning a pot that Paul was talking about.
Accept.
Functioning the pot, they're the same nature. Like one is completely, yeah. So it follows that non-permanent, not permanent, and product. It follows they are the same nature.
Accept.
Finished. So then that subject product in the proof of sound is permanent by the sign product because it is a correct nature sign.
Why?
So the subject product in the proof of sound as not permanent by the sign product is not a correct nature sign.
Accept.
Not a correct nature sign because
It's not in the 3 modes in that proof.
not the 3 modes.
I know, I'm wrong.
So which of the modes is it not? Which of the modes? Look, you're NAMDAC trained. You used to be one of the best
Yeah, why?
students here. You're personally trained. Although he's not here at the moment, is he? He can't give the answers. Is he on retreat or something?
Yeah, he is.
So he's not in the centre.
No, he's in the centre.
Oh, he's in retreating centre. Oh, well, you can ask him a quick question.
No, he doesn't leave his room.
He put a note under his door. Help! Anila, what do you say? The subject, Anila, the subject sound, it is not permanent because it's a product. Is that a correct sign?
It is correct sign.
It follows it's not a correct sign because it's not one of the three, either correct effect sign, correct nature sign, or correct non-observation sign.
Reason not established.
So which of the three is it then?
Correct non-observation sign.
Correct non-observation sign, yes. The subject product in the proof of sound as not being permanent is a correct non-observation sign because, what's the rough answer?
Because it is sign proving a negative phenomenon.
Yeah, it's
Correct
a sign
sign,
proving a
correct
negative.
sign, correct sign
the
proving
pre-
a negative phenomenon.
Yeah, the explicit predicate of the probandum there is negative, not permanent. So those signs are put in a class of their own. Although, you know, you can say there is a relationship of nature going on, although we haven't defined it exactly how precisely. You know, what is this type of nature relationship? You know, I was asking you to try to pinpoint that. But yeah, it's definitely true that not permanent and product are the same nature. One of each is the same nature as the other. But they are put in a special category, although, you know, that's a deliberate kind of, you know, sort of issue that isn't really sort of dealt with by the definition of nature sign. But a really good definition of nature sign would exclude negative phenomena. Now our definition doesn't, so I think that's just to provoke debate. If you look at this first Dalai Lama's definition of correct nature sign, so what's his text called? What's the first Dalai Lama's text called, Anila, on this subject?
Samarigyan.
Samarigyan, yeah. Okay, that's not a direct text per se, signs of reasoning. It's like a set text on commentary on Dharmakirti, yeah. But this is where all this material is being drawn from, Dharmakirti. Samarigyan, so sort of ornament of reasoning or something. Yeah, so his definition of a correct nature sign, you see, is it is a correct sign of a positive phenomena in the proof of that. So that's number one. So the predicate of the probandum, or the predicate, this the probandum there, he's the correct sign of a positive phenomena. So he's not saying the explicit predicate of the probandum, but this saying the probandum in general, I suppose. So sound not being permanent. That's not a positive phenomenon. You know, negative there, negative. And whatever is the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of that is necessarily a pervader that is the same nature as it. His other, you know, second criteria is also a bit different. So what now he's talking about the explicit predicate of the probandum. You see, the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of that is necessarily a pervader that is the same nature as it, the same nature as the sign. So the predicate of the probandum is going to be a pervader, which is the same nature as the sign. Yeah. So that's a little bit different from the correct effect sign. But here I'm highlighting that definition because it's saying it's a positive phenomenon, you see. Positive phenomena, correct sign of positive phenomena. So all this, our definition doesn't say it. Correct nature signs where it's sort of are always positive, and the non-observation signs are always negative, you see. So they're split off into two. And that's, I think, one of the reasons in the background for that is, you know, what these correct signs are used to prove in the path. you know, you can say correct effect signs. Well, what are they proving? Well, they're proving, you know, suffering and what's the cause of suffering, and you know, past and future lives. These are correct effect signs to establish those things. And then, you know, correct nature signs are proving impermanence. And then the correct non-observation signs, they're proving on the ultimate side. You see, when you think of those signs which are proving, you know, emptiness. Emptiness is always negative phenomena. So, you know, considering itself the self or the sprout, it doesn't inherently exist. It does not inherently exist because it's a dependent arising. It does not inherently exist because it's neither truly one nor truly many. It doesn't inherently exist because, you know, it's neither one with its parts nor separate from its parts. So never mind about the sign, but it's the explicit predicate for the Rabbanim. That's always a negative phenomena, not truly existent, not inherently existent. So they want to, you know, just that's maybe one background reason, like those signs where you're talking about emptiness, they're always talking about negative phenomena in the predicate position. So, you know, they're given special treatment, given a sort of separate little category so that you can think about them a bit more clearly. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we'll leave that. Okay, so that's just some little talk about the definition. Get you thinking about the definition a bit, and then divisions here I don't really see so exciting somehow. The divisions here have been a little bit less exciting. I don't think they really stimulate me to really understand anything more subtle, you know, more kind of, you know, more, you know, sort of illuminating. So I'm not really going to but we'll look at those in a minute, yeah. But I think, you know, it's good to just to revise what we talk about when we talk about trying to realize this correct sign, you know. The subject sound, it is impermanent because it's a product, right? So this is really challenging, you know, and it's very it's very relevant to the path, you know, to try and realize things are impermanent. You know, we're always supposed to meditate on death and impermanence, gross impermanence, and always, you know, carry that with us, you know, because things are so, you know, liable to disintegration or to, you know, collapse or, you know, death or kind of, you know, becoming useless just when we need them. So anybody who's mindful of impermanence, they're kind of much less, you know, much more sort of, you know, can keep an even mind. They don't get so distressed when, you know, the world breaks down on them. They're kind of expecting that. That's the way the world is, you know, it's constantly disintegrating. So, you know, the gross impermanence of death and kind of, you know, your pot breaking when you drop it on the floor, that's all gross. So you don't need signs, you know, that's pretty obvious, that kind of impermanence, that you don't need sort of special clever reasoning to, you know, kind of find that out. You can just watch it happening and you can know it's going to happen. If you drop the pot, you know it's going to smash, you know. You know it's going to sort of, you know, damage on sort of a hard floor. So even before it happens, you know it's going to, you know, even before you die, you know you're going to die. So you've got a kind of a sense of impermanence which is preceding the actual breakdown of the object. Yeah. So that's kind of what impermanence should be. It should be a knowledge that the thing is going to let you down. It is going to break. It's not just knowing it breaks when it breaks. I mean, that's okay. You're just observing what's going on, but the sense of impermanence you've got to carry around with you is that things are going to break down. You know, before it happens, you've got to know that. But it doesn't take much reasoning, you know, to know that we're going to die, or, you know, your pet dog is going to die, or whatever it is. You know, your car's going to get old. You're going to have to buy a new one. That's just the way things are. So that kind of knowledge builds up without kind of, you know, having to use subtle reasoning. But when we're talking about subtle impermanence, a bit different, isn't it? So it isn't something obvious to us, but it's still very valuable to realize, because that's the nature of the way things are, and that's the way, you know, fragility of things, and then, you know, their constant transformability. You know, when you're sensitive to those, you know, that kind of aspects of things, it's much more in tune with the way things are. It's sort of, you know, it's kind of very interesting to just to think how, you know, impermanent and you know, sort of constantly changing things are. I think it's a way of towards understanding self-suffering, but it doesn't mean it isn't just kind of interesting in its own right. It doesn't have to be disconnected. Oh, you know, in subtle impermanence means subtle suffering. But, you know, just to train the mind to be sensitive to the impermanence of something. You know, it's proper Dharma realization, subtle impermanence. So how do we get there? So if you realize something is a product, then, Jakob, that doesn't mean that you necessarily realize it's impermanent.
Yes, I accept.
Now we're talking about subtle impermanence, yeah, subtle impermanence.
Yes.
So the idea of something being a product is easier to realize than it being impermanent.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I think so. So that's got to be the case. Like, you know, some way you've got to have of realizing the sign without realizing the predicate, you know. And the sign has got to be easy to realize that the predicate, surely, you know. That's in some way, like dependent arising is going to be easy to realize an emptiness. At least at some level, you know, some level. So how are you going to persuade yourself? You know, you've got the sign there. You go, okay, they ask us to realize it sounds a product. Well, we can say it's produced naturally, or it's produced by the exertion of a being, deliberately by a person. So when that's an easy one to realize, you know, you try to blow the trumpet or clap your hands, you're going to make a sound, but it requires, you know, effort that is produced from causes then. So that's not too hard to figure out. But then, you know, for the person who's newly realizing impermanence, you see, they've got to work down to this subtle level. So that's where this example, the correct example, comes in. So sound is impermanent because it's a product. And then, you know, when you read the greater texts of Dharmakirti and so on, you know, they start bringing in the subtle, the simple example, the similar example, sorry, correct similar example, and adding that into, you know, the process of thinking. And then we say, you know, oh, of course, just like the last moment of butter lamp. So some of us have talked about this before, but others are not quite so, you know, familiar with this kind of line of thinking. So you've got to realize on sound that because it's a product, it's impermanent. Yeah, you've got to realize that pervasion on the subject. So when you can do that, then you're realizing that sound itself is impermanent. But before you can do that, you realize if it's a product, it's necessarily impermanent on other phenomena. Yeah, you've got to realize it on something. You know, then you realize it on the correct sign. Sorry, the similar example, the correct similar example first. So you realize if it's a product, it's necessarily impermanent on the similar example, the correct similar example, the last mode of the butter lamp. So if you realize, can you realize sound as if it's a product, it's necessarily impermanent on the last mode of the butter lamp? And is that kind of easier than realizing it on sound or on pot? Yeah, like if you think about the smoke on top of the smoky pass, there is smoke because it's fire. Okay, it's hard to realize the fire because the fire is behind the top of the hill. You can see the smoke, but you can't see the fire. You can't feel the fire with your skin, you know, too far away, and it's, you know, hidden behind the mountain. But you can see the fire in the smoky kitchen or something, the fire in the smoky bonfire in your garden. There you can see if there's smoke, there's actually fire. So you've got a kind of a more manifest example. And can you say to yourself, well, if there's smoke, there's necessarily fire, and that's true of the bonfire. So therefore, it must be true of the smoke that's rising from behind the hill as well. There must be fire there also. You develop a kind of an understanding that, you know, smoke requires fire, you see. It's in the very nature of smoke that there has to come from fire. And you get good, you know, you distinguish, oh, well, there's steam or there's things that look like smoke, but they're not really smoke, you know, they just look like smoke. So you don't get confused by them, you know, not all the time. Sometimes you might be confused. So you develop this real confidence that proper smoke, you know, actual smoke has to come from some type of fire, some type of combustion. So then you can say wherever you see smoke, then there has to be fire, whether you can see the fire or not. We get very good at that, you know. It's automatically that's not so difficult. But you know, products and impermanence are a little bit different because, you know, in certain circumstances, you know, fire is a manifest phenomenon. You know, you can either feel it with your fingers or you can see it with your eyes. So in many locations, it is manifest to our perception. But can you have a direct realization of subtle impermanence? Can you have an eye consciousness realizing subtle impermanence, you know, an ordinary being? What do you think, Jan?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Pardon?
I wouldn't think you can have an
No.
eye consciousness realizing subtle impermanence.
No, because, you know, that's the whole point about subtle impermanence, that it has to be realized independent of a sign, initially at least, by an ordinary being. You know, later on, the yogi, you might be able to see it.
Yeah, although you could say it appears though, yeah, but it's not ascertained.
Yeah, I think you can say it appears to the eye consciousness, but the eye consciousness can't grasp it because of our fixation of permanence, our overlay of permanence, or the crudeness of the, you know, the physical apparatus of the eye. It can only go to such a sort of fairly crude level of sensitivity. You know, you can't go down sort of to sensitivity to sort of the micro level. So it's incapable of seeing subtle impermanence with the gross, you know, ordinary eye of the human being. I don't know. So what do you do then? So you go into your last smoke to your butter lamp. Somehow that's easier to realize, or that's kind of a bridge, or kind of, you know, a stepping stone or something toward realizing subtle impermanence. So how's that going to work? Well, as we say, like, you know, first of all, you know, the effect follows from the cause. So, you know, your fuel goes up the wick, and then it gets into the hot zone, and it ignites. So this butter lamp's already burning. So it's drawing up the fuel from the wick, you know, from the reservoir of fuel in the cup of the butter lamp. But then it gets to the last moment. So there's a last drop of fuel going up the wick now. Yeah, so the last fuel, the last drop of fuel goes up the wick, just like the earlier drops. And then that also bursts into flame, doesn't it? You know, it oxidizes or something, you know. Oxidation is that's kind of combustion, isn't it? Fire in the ordinary sense of the word. Of course, you can have nuclear fire, you know, nuclear reactors and so on. They're working a bit differently, and the fire in the sun is a nuclear reaction, isn't it? But you know, the fire we're talking about in earthly terms is like combustion of a carbohydrate, actually. So it's the oxidation of a carbohydrate, like a fossil fuel, or butter, or burning a piece of paper, burning a candle. So they're all kind of carbohydrate hydrocarbons or something, hydrogen carbon mixtures, but then they're oxidizing into carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and H2O. The hydrogen oxidizes into water, and the carbon and hydrogen atom splits into pieces. Each bit kind of hooks up with oxygen molecule or something, oxygen atom. Yeah, so some kind of chemical reaction like that. So at that point, then you got your heat and your light that you want for your cooking or your illuminating. So far, so good. But what happens is, with the butter lamp, then at the last moment of the butter lamp, you get the last moment of fuel, and that produces the last moment of flame. So that's the interesting thing about the flame then, yeah. But as soon as the fuel is used up, as soon as the last moment of fuel is used up, what happens? Marco.
What happened? When the fight
Hmm?
stops? The
Pardon?
flame stops?
The flame goes out, yeah. So it's like no more fuel, then no more flame.
Yeah.
First of all, to have flame, you've got to have fuel. So the cause gives rise to the effect. But in this instance, you can see clearly, or you can understand clearly when you think about it, as soon as the cause kind of it disintegrates and becomes nothing, that means the fuel runs out. The fuel gives itself up into flame or whatever. Then as soon as there's no more fuel, there's no more flame. So as soon as the cause ceases, then the effect has got to cease. So it's a kind of it's kind of sort of really interesting situation. First of all, in order to have the effect, the cause has to give up its nature. The cause has to disintegrate. The cause has to cease in order for the effect to begin. Right? If that's true of any substantial cause, yeah. The seed becomes the sprout, yeah. So the seed has to cease, and the sprout, takes over. The sprout comes into existence upon the disintegration of the seed. So the seed has to cease in order for the sprout to occur, in order for the sprout to arise, so that the cause is necessary for the effect, but in order for the effect to take place, the cause has to disintegrate, and then the effect can arise out of the transformation of that cause, substantial cause, maybe we're talking about, anyway, main cause like that. Yeah. But then you say, well, as soon as the cause is disintegrated, then as soon as the cause has ceased, then the effect has to cease as well. Not exactly the same time, but in one tiny moment later. The fuel does give rise to flame, but of course there's no more fuel, then the flame immediately goes out in the last moment. So the cause has to stop in order for the effect to start. But as soon as there's no more cause, then the effect immediately fails to continue. So it's kind of a really interesting situation now. So that means that suggests like how momentary that last moment of the flame is. As soon as the cause has given up its effect, so that means the cause has gone out of existence. So then the effect has to go out of existence because there's no more cause to keep it going. So then if you think about that, you get kind of quite close to subtle impermanence, you see. So then you go back to the previous moments of the flame, not the last one, but all the other moments of flame are doing the same thing. Yeah, you're only going to have another moment of flame because you've got another moment of fuel coming up the wick. And as soon as that moment of fuel is, that drop of fuel has gone into the flame, it produces an extra, moment of flame, but only by disintegrating. So then if you want the flame to continue, there has to be another moment of flame coming, another drop of fuel coming up the wick, becoming, the next moment of flame. So the flames are continually produced by continually arising, fresh, supply of cause. So each moment of flame then is produced from a new moment of fuel. So you can see how if you just look at the whole continuum of the flame over several minutes, it's always only coming from, a new set of causes, a new amount of fuel. So then that's giving you the idea of subtle impermanence, isn't it? If every moment has to come from a fresh set of causal conditions, then of course every moment's got to be like a transformation. Every moment's got to be different from the last moment. Different event. So that's subtle impermanence. So it doesn't matter how small a moment you draw. Say, well, is there a limit to the moment? Well, there doesn't seem to be. It's not even moments really. It really is just a continuous stream of transformation, and we can chop it up into moments and say, oh, this is the first moment, that's the second moment. This is the first minute, that's the second moment. But really, it's just a continuous stream of something becoming different from what it was in the moment before. So that's true of sound, isn't it? It's just like it's true of flame, it's also true of sound. You think of the sound of your voice coming through your voice box. If you want another moment of sound, another moment of the sound of your voice, you've got to push some more air through your vibrating, vocal mechanism in your throat. If you stop pushing air out, then the sound immediately stops. So each moment of sound is coming from a new moment of breath passing through your vibrating, parts of your kind of throat. It's true of our bodies, because all we're doing is burning fuel, isn't it? How do we stay warm in this cold winter weather? Well, we have to continually burn fuel. That's why we're eating the carbohydrates. It's exactly this. This process of combustion is going on, just like in the candle flame. It's just the same fuel. It's just carbohydrates. It could be the same. We get eating butter the same, and we burn it in our cells, just like that butter lamp is burning butter to, light up the shrine in some sort of Tibetan nomad's tent or something. Our bodies is burning butter in the same way. So that makes it easy to see our physical side is very impermanent, isn't it? So then you go to something like a pot, though. So is that the same? Somebody says, but yeah, the pot's different. Yeah, you make the pot, and then you just leave the pot. When it comes out of the oven, it comes out of the kiln, and you just leave it there, and then it stays where it is. It doesn't have to disintegrate. That's different from the flame. So what do you think, Maria? Is the pot subtly impermanent, disintegrating like the flame? Like the last moment of the butter lamp?
Yes, it is. And I think it's quite visible when you look at flower pots, for example, that don't have the, like there are different kinds of pots. But for example, I have flower pots that already kind of show that. But then when we look at like a porcelain pot, for example, then it's not so visible, but it is there. The impermanence is there, even if we don't see it. It's less obvious in a pot than in a flame of a butter lamp. And then there is the different, like the cause of the pot ceases to exist, but the pot continues to exist, whereas the butter lamp's flame ceases to exist after the cause ceases to exist, very soon after that. So the pot remains for a much longer time, and it's less obvious, but it is still, there is the process. It's very subtle. So maybe with some kind of microscope, it would be possible to detect the I don't know, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we have these powerful instruments like, you know, electron microscopes, where you actually look at the pot and see the atoms moving around or something, vibrating at least. I don't know, but you know, our Dharma, our Buddhist logicians of the past were just using their kind of clever reasoning, and they come into the conclusion that everything's like the flame. Everything is undergoing that process of momentary change.
Now it's interesting when you look at, for example, old plastic bowls, and then when you see a new plastic bowl, it's very shiny, but then after 20 years, it's clear that it's fading, the color is fading away, and it's kind of like also starting to, yeah. So when we look at something with like a very long time distance, then we can maybe see some signs of it, but just like this, obviously, we wouldn't see it. But with the butter lamp, we would see because it's flickering, and we can even see the cause kind of vanishing in front of our eyes, maybe if they're long enough.
We go from the obvious one of the butter lamp to the less obvious ones, a pot or porcelain pot, and say it's all the same. They're all going through the same process. But there are people who say, yeah, well, the flame is different, and the pot, when you make it and you don't disturb it, you don't you know, pour hot liquids into it, you don't use it and get it broken or cracked or chipped or something. So then it just stays steadily without having to change. Because there's no pressure from the outside, no impact of external causes. So it just remains in a sort of steady state, static state, until some external cause comes along, and then, you know, it'll get old or cracked or something. But if you don't touch it and just leave it where it is, then it enters into a state of not changing, just abiding.
But this cannot be, because it's not in a vacuum, because there is the air, there is the oxygen, there is always an external influence that is causing the change, even if we cannot see it. So these people who might say this are just thinking that because they don't see it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, but in order for pot to change, is it necessary for there to be external causes acting upon it, or does it disintegrate just by its very own nature, Tim?
It changes by its very own nature. They don't need an external cause. Its nature as an impermanent object means it's constantly changing and will disintegrate.
So you're convinced of that, are you?
Yeah, I am sort of both. It seems to be the way the laws of physics say things should be or are.
Have you got a correct belief or a correct assumption, or you've got an inferential valid cognizer?
Low rig. Oh, okay. Oh, hopefully it's a correct assumption. I don't think it's a valid cognizer for subtle impermanence.
No.
Well, for a valid cognizer, I'd have to sort of be able to. That sounds a bit ropey. I think my connection's fading a bit.
Yeah. I think we can hear you. Yeah, but it just looks kind of like it's not changing. Yeah,
that's true. It just looks like it, but we know from physics it's vibrating all the time though. So that change is there as long as it's above absolute zero. We know absolute zero is impossible to achieve. So from the point of physics, the atoms are vibrating, moving about.
So you're trusting more to what the scientists tell us rather than your actual process of Buddhist reasoning. Then you think the scientists are more convincing, do you? The scientists say so, therefore it must be like that.
Well,
never mind, it's Buddhist reasoning.
I don't see a conflict between the two. If the as the Dalai Lama says, if science proves that something's wrong, we have to accept that. But I don't think science proves that subtle impermanence is wrong. I think it reinforces it.
Yeah, but when it is somebody telling you, and you think, oh, they're an authority on the subject, you're disbelieving what they say, aren't you? So that's not really. Well, you know, it could be a valid cognizer, even then. You know, it could be like it's true because people tell you it's true and you know they're right. But basically, it's people telling you and you believe it. Because until you've looked through an electron microscope and know what you're looking at and done a few experiments yourself,
that is
you're
true.
just believing.
It does coincide with my personal experience. I mean, I've seen things, pots that you leave them and they come back and they will look aged. So just by even when they haven't been necessarily acted on by something physical on the outside, you can see that they change. If you leave a pot anywhere, it'll come back. It's bound to look different. Or a piece of wood, it's bound to look different.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's one way to think about it. You know, if you leave the thing over a certain length of time, it changes, like a flower wilting or something. Yeah, a flower that you cut and put in a vase.
Yeah,
something like that just change a bit quicker. It's still too slow for the human eye to see the changes actually going on. But you know, just over a day or a couple of days, you see the flower gradually wilting and bending. So you can extrapolate from that to say, well, it just is doing that bit by bit, you know, just not jerkily, like suddenly, but gradually, just, you know, so you get a sense of subtle impermanence that way, like you say with your aging pot or piece of plastic. Yeah.
You know, for a pot though, I mean, the causes for the pot to be created might finish, but the cause for the pot to exist haven't finished, and it's or we take those causes into account. We don't necessarily see like the nature of the clay, things like that, and it's only when those causes perhaps it seems finish that the pot will be destroyed. So there's more going on on subtle levels rather than the gross causes of the pot that have to finish before the pot finishes.
Well, each moment of pot's the cause of the next moment. Yeah. So one moment ago, pot is produced, you know, but then it immediately disintegrates like the flame went out. But you just don't notice it's disintegrated because there's another moment of pot that's arisen in its place.
Yeah.
Which looks very similar to the first moment, but still it's momentary disintegration.
Yeah, it looks very similar.
With the last moment of the bottle lamp, that's the idea.
Yeah, it will be very similar, but will be subtly different.
Yeah.
And we have
can I ask a question, Geshe Graham?
Yeah.
What I don't get about the pot example is what is kind of propelling the next moment of pot, other than relying on things like science. You know, we can see, like you say, the flame going fast, and you kind of can see that, and the wick going down, but a pot could stay there pretty much a whole lifetime, way beyond. So I don't get what it is that is repeating it, if you get what I mean. Just atoms imploding and exploding together in some big soup. But I don't understand how the Tibetans would grasp it without understanding.
It's like everything's changing. Right? Everything's in like this, you know, unfolding. Everything's in a state of transformation and process. And some things, as they transform, they maintain the appearance of a similar type. So they maintain the appearance of what was going on in the last previous moments of the continuum. But other things, you know, they become radically different when the transformation occurs in that moment. Then they become something completely different. You know, it becomes something like you know, like ice turning into water. The solid becomes becomes a liquid. So it's that the transformation that occurs, we can look at it and say, yeah, there's something different that's come out. But when it's something like a pot, like the transformation ends up being something still of a similar type to the previous moment. So everything's always processing. There's never any doubt that there's all kind of lots of changes going on. So the pot's no different from anything else in having to be different in the next moment. It's just it doesn't look very different to our minds. So we say, oh, it's the pot, you know, we say it's the pot that was there a moment ago. We grasp it as to be permanent. But that's just our discrimination, you know. We have this fixed idea of a pot, and so long as it fits into that category, we're happy, and it's like as if it's not changed. But if you see a piece of ice and it's melted into water, we say, oh yeah, there's a change happened there. We put it into a different category. We no longer impute it to be something solid. We say, oh, that's liquid now. Mm-hmm. So you know, it's easy to see the impermanence, like it's changed its type. Yeah.
Is it Graham?
But sorry, Andy.
Yeah. Okay.
All I was going to add was it must be going really fast then.
Yeah. No.
Sorry.
Undoubtedly, yeah. It never static. It is never static. It is always, yeah, as change as rapid as you can imagine, I guess. Yes, Hanneli, did you want to ask something?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, this sounds very lower school, but is time changing? Now, time is a functioning thing, is it?
I guess so. Yeah.
So why couldn't you say that time is what is causing the pot to change? I mean, isn't that what makes everything change?
It seems like from the changes of the object, then the concept of time arises. So the objects change, and then you say, oh, so there's time, there's such a thing as time then, this continuum in which things change by things changing, then you can talk about time. If there were no changes, then there wouldn't be any time, I don't think. It'd just be like, it wouldn't be a concept. So it's the other way around.
The other way around.
Changes, there is
time only exists because objects change.
Yeah.
Can I ask still about this? Now, the pot, if it doesn't have any influence from the external things, then it would internally have the like nature of being impermanent, so it would change. But then when we think of interdependence, then there is nothing that would not be dependent on other things. So the pot itself could not just like, if the pot would not have the external conditions like air and space and perhaps time, or maybe time then comes out of the pot, but anyway, that these things, then the pot would not, it wouldn't exist because it's existing only. So necessarily then the external things will influence the change in the pot, and the pot will also influence how the external things change as long as they both exist. Is this?
Well, that's very true, isn't it? When you think about like interdependence, yeah, dependent arising, then there's nothing that is free from external, causes actually. But the idea of impermanence that we're trying to put over here in the understanding of subtle impermanence is that something disintegrates by way of its own very, just by the fact of having been produced. It doesn't need anything else to come along. It doesn't need a hammer to come along and smash it. Or it doesn't need somebody to come along and pour hot water into it, heat it up. Even if nobody does any of those things, it will still be just disintegrating, will be changing, passing away from what it is, changing into something else, just by way of its own, that's just the way it is. Just like anything produced has got to be like that. So that's kind of the kind of that's where you got to train your mind, familiarize your mind to be acquainted with.
Yeah, thank you.
It doesn't require external causes, although, as you say, as you point out, then there always will be external causes anyway, of some kind or another. Anyway, we've been going on. We're getting a bit over time now, so shall we stop there? Thank you for listening. One of my pet